Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning and welcome to Canada India Foundation's third session of our virtual webinar speaker series on Ayurveda. The topic of today's discussion is Ayurveda in Canada, and our distinguished speaker is Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya. Our special guest for this morning is Honorable Maninder Sidhu, Member of Parliament, Brampton East. Welcome to you all. In today's discussion, we'll be touching upon the current environment of Ayurveda in Canada and how it is important for Canadians as an alternative healthcare tool. Friends, holistic health and wellness has been a key part of CIF's priorities, and our speaker series on Ayurveda is Science of Life, which is over 5,000-year-old technique and practiced in India since time immemorial, is an endeavor in that direction. I'm sure you will enjoy today's session. And before we begin, please allow me to invite our special guest, Honorable Maninder Sidhu, for a brief remarks. Mr. Sidhu is a member of Parliament from the riding of Brampton East, and he's the member of various standing committees, including natural resources, transport, infrastructure, and communities. And apart from these, he's also the member of Parliamentary Association Interparliamentary Groups. Thank you, Mr. Sidhu, for joining, and over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As the Honourable host was saying, my name is Maninder Sidhu, the Federal Member of Parliament for Brampton East. And first of all, I want to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to join in this virtual speaker series today. Before I would begin, I would like to say thank you to Ritesh, to Bhavan, and the whole team at the Canada India Foundation for inviting me as a guest speaker. I'm honored to be here. Being a voice on behalf of my constituents in Brampton, many of whom identify with Indian roots and backgrounds, is something that I hold in high regard and value greatly. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the lives of thousands of Canadians and millions of people across the globe, including in countries like India. It has prevented family members from physically celebrating important milestones together, such as birthdays, weddings, and other holidays. Even traveling to visit parents and grandparents and children have been postponed. As a father of two young children, I myself understand the worry of wanting to do everything for your children, but also ensure that they are kept safe in the process. We as Canadians, immigrants, and a culture of people are stronger together because we have the compassion and willingness to know that our actions can make a difference in the lives of others. Now, through these actions, we can improve our research and learning capacities to broaden our understanding of different medicines and therapies that are deemed safe and effective for those wanting to explore natural health options. Canada and India have a strong, long-standing relationship built upon many shared traditions. Canada is proud to be home to one of the largest South Asian communities abroad per capita. Approximately 2 million people and over 5% of Canadians are of Indian heritage, including myself. The deep cultural and political ties shared between Canada and India strengthen our relationship. These partnerships include but are unlimited trade, science, and technology. This list is encouraged to grow and evolve as we work together. With India being Canada's 9th largest export market and 10th largest trading partner, India is an important market for Canada. Working together through research, development, skills training, infrastructure, and renewable energy sectors is an important objective for a Canadian-Indo relationship. On a global scale, Prime Minister Trudeau has taken an active stance in the search for a vaccine against COVID-19 by pledging $850 million globally for greater diagnostics, treatments, and vaccines. You know, we uplift each other when we are willing to share our knowledge and resources for the betterment of all. Modern medicine has been a critical contributing factor to the eradication of diseases, treatments of serious illnesses, and the improvement of diagnosis capabilities. Before modern medicine had evolved to what we experience it to be today, practices in herbal and ancient sciences are how societies throughout history were able to treat illnesses, improve bodily functions, and live a balanced lifestyle, which is very important to me and my family. Investing in science to analyze and fund research through a natural medicinal lens will help people take a more preventative and proactive approach to their health. Since the beginning of this pandemic, the message that many of us have heard repeatedly has surrounded around the word prevention. We help prevent the spread by wearing a mask, washing our hands, and physically distancing from others. The same concept can be spoken regarding natural medicinal practices and therapies. Health Canada understands the importance and demand for natural health products for Canadians. Its goal is to be able to provide safe and accurate information for Canadians looking towards a more natural approach to their healthcare. They can do so through enforcement, regulation, and consulting with the public, industries, and interested parties. This will help better protect consumers and give Canadians peace of mind knowing that the product they are interacting with is safe, effective, and do not negatively react with existing treatments. It is common for Canadians to want to seek out alternative medicines, therapies, herbal remedies, and naturopathic medicinal advice from industry professionals. Although naturopathic doctors do not replace the role of one's primary family physician, they do offer an alternative approach to medicine that can aid in a person's road to recovery and health. By integrating both modern science and ancient therapies, we can create a more comprehensive approach to fortifying our nation's health. The government's job in this approach is to ensure that Canadians are protected when seeking out new healthcare options. I thoroughly appreciate the message that has been included in the invitation flyer that many of you may have had the chance to read. It stated that the government supports the use of natural medicines that provide safe, effective, and justified care using their expertise. Health Canada encourages Canadians to educate and research what options they have in terms of their health, as this will better protect you from misleading information. Second opinions are always a good idea. Consulting credible sources such as the Health Canada website is encouraged, and voicing your concerns when something does not seem to be working for you is never to be discouraged. Your voice matters when it comes to your health. As one of India's most traditional systems of medicine that have been in existence for thousands of years, Ayurveda medicines and practices have been used to treat a wide variety of ailments with an array of herbal remedies. Many of you may already know or be excited to learn that Ayurvedic medicines are classified as natural health products or NHPs here in Canada. Health Canada understands that there can be an overwhelming abundance of information, especially when it pertains to health. I'm sure we all seen and heard of Google Doctors. You talk to your neighbors or your family members and everyone says, this is what I think you have, but we all need to make sure that the information that we read, is based on facts. Therefore, product licensing is an important role in ensuring that the sources of the information, ingredients, and chemistry of the products are safe, supported by evidence regarding their claims, and most importantly, they're effective. When seeking a more natural approach to your healthcare needs, I encourage everyone to ensure that the products you're consuming are licensed to be legally sold in Canada. Some questions you should consider asking yourself when finding the right products or treatments include, has this product been involved in clinical trials? And are there published studies from medicinal academic journals? Authorized Ayurvedic medicines that have met these requirements set out by Health Canada to be sold over the counter will have a natural product number or an NPN number. So please be mindful of these criteria. Some of the things you may ask is how Health Canada evaluates products. They would go through labeling, good manufacturing practices, proper storage, and ingredient chemistries are all factors that Health Canada considers so that Canadians can access the natural products they desire safely. I also encourage you to be wary of dangerous terms such as miracle cure or other verbiage that seems too good to be true, because it probably is. I am encouraged to see that Canadians are given an array of healthcare options that add to the standard of care they currently receive and help them feel better in their day-to-day lives. We are encouraged to seek medical help when we are sick, have an infection, or need emergency services. Naturopathic doctors that specialize in herbal medicine and remedies are available here in Canada, and it's good to always get their advice. As we journey through this pandemic together, the message that I want to convey within the scope of natural medicine is that Canadians have access to accessible healthcare options for everyone. Our government's contribution of $850 million to WHO is so that we can help create an effective vaccine against COVID-19, but also to ensure that it can be accessible to vulnerable and impoverished nations. We believe as Canadians that healthcare should not be only given to those who can afford it, and we have made this clear during these difficult times. As we make contributions on the global level, we are also funding initiatives here in Canada. From PPE supplies and equipment to vaccine research, our government is funding Canadian research initiatives to create and secure vaccine formula that can be distributed quickly and safely once it is deemed safe for public use. As early as April, Prime Minister Trudeau announced $1 billion in funding to support the plan to mobilize science to fight COVID-19 through vaccine development, treatment production, and virus tracking. This includes signing with over 7 companies to secure access to doses through their COVID-19 vaccine candidates. I also want to stop and say thank you to Minister Anita Anand for her tireless efforts. The minister has been working hand in hand with Prime Minister Trudeau to secure vaccines for Canadians and support vaccine development across the world. Our commitment to keeping Canadians healthy and safe will extend on a global level, as the power of shared knowledge means that we can act as contributors to another nation's success, like with our partners and friends in India. Naturopathic medicine is a science that should be explored. By calling it a science, it deserves to be explored using the scientific method that is objective in nature and favors facts over beliefs. We live in a society today we are constantly bombarded with information. Using science to our advantage acts as a filter for this information to ensure that we are reading, consuming, and listening to accurate and unbiased information. During the beginning of my remarks, I mentioned that prevention is prevalent theme that we have been experiencing this past year. And I want to reiterate it's important because we all have a role to play in it. Preventing not only ourselves from getting sick, but others as well are what we owe to our nurses, doctors, bus drivers, taxi drivers, police officers, and every other first responder that helped our communities through this pandemic since day one. Medicine is usually not a one-size-fits-all, which is why having a naturopathic option aligned with modern practices can help tailor the proper treatments and approach to each person's unique healthcare needs. Integrating these practices to incorporate mental health awareness can help find solutions, can help find solace and peace. The effects of quarantining and social distancing have left us all feeling down and not ourselves, which I'm sure we can all, combine with. Finding a balance by protecting the body and mind can help us feel less alone and ease our spirits from depression and isolation. Our government is working diligently for Canadians. We are committed to building back better so that no one falls through the cracks. I am grateful for the trust that was bestowed upon me last year from my constituents who represent them in Ottawa, and I'm committed to being a voice for the community in all aspects of government, including health. Thank you for inviting me here today. I'd also like to thank Satish Thakkar as well for having me here. He's a very important member of this organization, and I wish you all the best, and please stay safe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sidhu, for sharing your insight and thoughts on this very important topic as we march ahead on the journey of spreading Ayurveda, a holistic science. I think your support and help is very much important. So we really appreciate for you taking time out to join us this morning. And let me now invite our national convener, Mr. Ritesh Malik, to introduce our speaker. Mr. Ritesh Malik, over to you.
Thank you. Namaste and welcome all. Our distinguished speaker today, Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya, is a Harvard-educated physician trained in family medicine and preventive medicine. She's a published scientist trained in pharmacology, neuroscience, and Ayurveda. Since 2003, she serves as clinical assistant professor of family medicine in the Department of Medicine at Weill Cornell Medical College in New York. She has completed her PhD in ancient Ayurvedic chemistry, pharmaceutics, and pharmacology from Banaras Hindu University, India. A documentary film on her work, Healer's Journey into Ayurveda, is shown on the Discovery Channel. Her first book, Everyday Ayurveda, is a national bestseller published by Penguin Random House in 2015. Floor is all yours, Dr. Bhaswati.
And thank you for having me. Listening to the remarks of Honorable Sidhu was an awakening for me that though I'm sitting in India, I need to remember that there are populations around the world that have very, very different beliefs, and that our science of Ayurveda needs to be tailored to different people. When I live in Canada, I live in Brampton East, which my cousin who lives in that house, it's his house, he calls it Browntown. And everywhere I go, I see people walking, taking good walks, using their power of exercise, and knowing that the prevention of disease in these cold winter months in Canada is only countered by good yoga, good solid Indian cooked food with the healthy spices, and good exercise, good spirituality. And many of them actually quietly use Ayurveda. So we're going to spend some time talking about that today. All of you who are here know that daylight savings time ended today. And you may know that Canada was the first to introduce daylight savings time in Thunder Bay. And it then caught on in different parts of the world, such as Europe and in the Americas. But the fact that it started in Canada and that I read that had me thinking about the fact that Canada is actually one of the most forward-thinking Western countries about health. And that is one of the reasons why I accepted the invitation from my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Vaidya Verma, who had said that because I have come to Canada so many times to lecture, that he wanted me to talk about Ayurveda from my perspective as a US licensed board certified physician, as an Indian trained Rasa Shastra expert in heavy metals, and as a person who lives in France part of the year, lectures in South America, and comes to Canada. So I'm going to tailor some of this. And if I say anything that seems illegal according to Canada, please catch me on it, because what it will show you actually is that the science of Ayurveda is a science in and of itself. And what we have to do is adapt what we know as true and wait for modern science to catch up to some of it. So I'm going to share some of those remarks pretty boldly, because as a scientist that has been hunting this, I'm also of South Asian origin, and I've always wondered, what's the science behind the stuff that I was told to do? So that actually started my journey, and both Mr. Thakkar, Vaidya Verma, and Mr. Malik have asked me to talk a little bit about why the heck I'm doing Ayurveda. I'm going to share my screen and share some slides with you to share my experience. So this is a little bit about what I'm doing. Currently, I'm a clinical postdoctoral fellow learning how to integrate Ayurveda with modern medicine, sitting in Udupi, Karnataka part of the year, sitting in Paris part of the year, and sitting in New York part of the year. And I think my other titles were mentioned. As a Fulbright specialist, I'm looking at how public health is practiced throughout the world at this time. I begin with what my journey has looked like and answer the question, why Ayurveda? I began in the traditional Ayurveda way of giving obeisance to my teachers and my gurus. Of course, my parents are here. And the Lord Dhanvantari, who is the teacher of all medicines. The Lord Dhanvantari is not an idol sitting out in the, on the table, as many people think. The Lord Dhanvantari is that aspect of us that is the healer inside of us. Now, if you want to call that religion, you can, but you can also say that it's a belief, it's a way of life, to think that we have that power within us to heal. When we have the power to make money, we call it Ganesh or Lakshmi. When we have the power to learn music and wisdom, we call that Saraswati. When we have the power to sustain ourselves, we call that Vishnu. That doesn't make them gods. It makes them parts of ourselves that are easier to see when we put icons out. So Lord Dhanvantari has guided that part of me that can heal. My journey began as an undergraduate learning neuroscience and pharmacology. It continued through a PhD in pharmacology and neuroscience. I worked at the NIH in the Office of Alternative Medicine, where I learned that there was something called alternative medicine to the mainstream dominant medicine system, which is called biomedicine or allopathic medicine. I was then taken into actually to study in Tibet with a teacher at Columbia University, who then brought me back, and I met Jonathan Mann, who had started the UN AIDS program in Geneva, and asked me to come and join him at the Harvard School of Public Health, where he was teaching about health and human rights. The right to health freedom, the right to choose your own medicine, is something that I love about Canada. And we're going to talk about how the regulations are actually set up so that people have the right to choose that which is safe, effective, and is justifiable. I also studied medicinal plants with Dr. Norman Farnsworth. And through all of these, incidentally, men, I learned that there are things in conventional medicine that just do not address the way that I was brought up. My father was a biomedical scientist, a well-known geneticist, veterinarian, human infertility doctor. My mother was a botanist, a public health worker at the New Jersey Department of Public Health, but also fed us using Indian spices. And when we got sick, while my dad would have preferred to give us an antibiotic, my mother would take ajwain and saute it on, or not saute, but dry fry it on, toast it on a iron tawa, which is an iron griddle. And then she would sprinkle some lemon juice and put a few drops of black salt on it. And she would toss it around, and then she would make us take half a teaspoon of it. And it was burning in our mouth, and it was very, very burning. We would swallow it, but our tummy ache would disappear. And I always wondered what's the basis of that. So when I got to medical school, I asked the doctors, why does this work? Why does ajwain work? Not one could explain it to me. The truth and the reality of what I experienced in my household with my mother never went away. I wanted to understand the scientific basis of it. And really, that's been the journey of the little girl that's inside of me as my body grew up into a woman, trying to understand, why do these things work so well? Why do they work for hundreds of years? Why do they work in the Punjab? Why do they work in Gujarat? Why do they work all throughout India? And when I bring them to America and I'm sitting in Omaha, Nebraska, or San Francisco, or Princeton, New Jersey with my parents, why does it work? I looked at it from a chemistry angle, and I did about 17 courses in chemistry. I continued studying, and I could not understand it until I made the film, Healer's Journey into Ayurveda, in which I met Dr. Vaidya Tirumulpadji. And he said to me, Ayurveda is in your blood, Ayurveda is in your genes, Ayurveda is in your heart, and you must return to Ayurveda. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm an MD. I'm a, board certified, arrogant medical doctor, and I know what's right because I've read the clinical studies. And he said, yeah, fine. Ayurveda is in your heart. Sure enough, I found myself asking questions as I practiced modern medicine. And I couldn't understand why people would quietly in their kitchens use remedies that were called kitchen remedies, but they worked better than the many medicines that I so diligently prescribed. And that story took me to Arya Vaidya Pharmacy. The MD of that group of institutions took me under his wing, tutored me, taught me, and actually brought me into his family. I studied with him for 18 years until he passed just a couple of months ago now. And then I received a Fulbright. And I was taken to India to study the concept of Ojas, which is immunity, which is very, very relevant right now. In that journey, I met Professor Jha, who is an expert of the use of metals to cure incurable diseases. He was the dean of the University, Banaras Hindu University, which many Indians have heard of. And he welcomed me to do a PhD, which was mentioned before. So I've been studying Ayurvedic chemistry, modern chemistry, clinical medicine, and a variety of also health policy because of my MPH studies. I'm going to share some of that with you, and we will take questions in about 20 minutes or so, and see if there are any specific questions I can help you with. So I'm going to try to talk about some of these things. I'll do it somewhat superficially because I don't know whether there are more physicians here or more audience that are laypersons here. So I'll do a little mix of things. First, I did talk about why Ayurveda, and that was to increase my toolbox and to explain some of the things that come from my heritage, which I know works because I've seen it work consistently, but that have no explanations in modern medicine. Second, I will continue with some fundamental principles of Ayurveda. Certainly, this is not a short course in Ayurveda, but I'll explain some of the main principles which I think are very interesting and that help us to understand the philosophy and why it works and why some of the tools are so useful. Then I will continue with the conversation that Honorable Sidhu mentioned about how Ayurveda is seen by the Canadian government and offer some slides from Health Canada about NPNs and about some of the structures that are in place for people who are interested in Ayurveda and for regulating it as well as for accessing it. And then we'll have a little discussion on the present view of Ayurveda. So I talked a bit about why I was curious about other systems, but the thing that really pulled me away from modern medicine is the fact that there's a lot of medical errors. To Err is Human was a book put out by the National Academy of Sciences, the Institute of Medicine, in 1999, about 21 years ago. And in it, they talked about all these different types of errors. And it seemed like they were making excuses. Oh, the healthcare providers are suffering in silence because they make medical errors and they can't talk about it. And when I was in training, I kept thinking, why do people make so many errors? It's an entire wonderful debate and discussion. But the bottom line is that if you're patient-centered, the last thing that you want is to know that doctors know that they make errors, they purposefully hide it, and that all of these errors are just failures, oftentimes of now the digital system, sometimes of communication, and actually sometimes because the way that the very good medical system is set up, it is not implementable, either because of cost or because of access or because of delays of time, which happen when places are crowded. I saw that at my hospital, New York Presbyterian Hospital, Cornell, in March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So in this paper, this book, To Err is Human, it said that global errors are one of the leading causes of death. At that time, it was the sixth leading cause of death. A recent paper from Johns Hopkins showed that it is the third leading cause of death, just after heart disease and cancer. And this was very difficult for me because somewhere I learned, first do no harm. And that principle stayed inside of me because if nothing else, I am a patient-centered physician. I don't really care as much as I should about the money or the status. Otherwise, I'd be a full professor, I'd be a medical director, and I'd drive around in a Lamborghini. But I don't. In fact, I'm barely clothed. So I live a very simple life because I really am so hungry and so curious to know, how do we heal the patient? What are those things that help us to heal the patient? As you have heard, I did this film. I also wrote a book about Dinacharya and how a layperson that's just getting started can learn about Ayurveda with the first of the basic principles, which is Dinacharya, the daily routine. If you have very low funds and you just want to learn how to incorporate Ayurveda into your life without having fancy medicines or things that are, subject to regulation, you can learn about Dinacharya. You can go online. You can learn from a variety of sources. Probably out of the 42 things that are listed in the Sanskrit ancient texts from 10,000 years ago, you are probably doing 15 to 20 of them. The question is, are you doing them in the order that is good for your body? And are you doing them in a way that's going to help you to bring back your clock genes? And we might have some time to talk about how there's a factory in your brain that feeds one product to the next set of cells and creates a balance in your body that makes it efficient, just like a factory. Certainly we know that when a car is made, if the wrong parts are made at the wrong times, they take up space and they don't get utilized properly. The same thing happens in your body. Ayurveda knew that, and so they encouraged us to explore Dinacharya and put it in our lives. I also created, through an NIH grant that I authored and implemented for a whole year, we created an initiative called the Educational Development of CAM. And in it, we integrate a variety of complementary, alternative, traditional, integrative medicines, however you want to name these medicines that are not part of the dominant medical system. So through all that, I came to Ayurveda because I realized that my black box wasn't big enough unless I included some more modalities. One of the reasons I did choose Ayurveda is because it is so expansive. So I will not talk about the 25 to 30 main principles of Ayurveda, but I will tell you that there are many main principles that guide its science. They are practical, they are technical, and they're very learnable. Some of the terminology include the concept of dosha, which hasn't yet evolved to be integrated into modern medicine yet. In brief, dosha talks about 3 different themes or energies that pervade every living system, not just the humans, but we'll take humans for example. The theme of movement, everything that moves, the biology of what moves, the chemistry of what moves, the physics of what moves. Those 3 are the pre-medical classes, and yet they're not integrated in modern medicine. And in fact, most of us that went to medical school talk about how we don't use most of the biology, chemistry, or physics that we learned in our pre-med classes. Ayurveda does, but instead of calling it as 3 different sciences, it integrates this idea of movement and says, see the birds? A mommy bird can fly 100 miles and come back to the same nest in the same tree and know exactly where it is. How does it know to move that way? We can't find our own car in a big parking garage. How does that mother know to find its baby's nest? That idea of moving with purpose and knowing exactly how and where to move and flow is called Vata. V-A-T-A is the English spelling, and it's a theme of movement. The second dosha is Pitta, and it's a theme of transformation. Everything that transforms matter to energy, energy to matter. So taking a piece of food and breaking it down to its, not only its building blocks, but to energy, to ATP, as it's called in biochemistry. That energy, which we call Jatar Agni, or the fire of our body, is transformative. And it takes building blocks and transforms them. It creates all of our enzymes. It governs everything that transforms in our body. The third principle is called Kapha, and it is about lubrication and holding things together. If you just learn the doshas, the Vata, the Pitta, and the Kapha, and you learn them a little bit deeper, and you learn how to take them into the world and see them in nature, in your food, in the function of human physiology, you'll see how elegant and how integrative it is. Modern medicine doesn't know how to do that yet, and I have a lot of difficulties explaining that to my colleagues who are either specialists in oncology or specialists in internal medicine, or even in OB-GYN. And as I practice in modern medicine, I find myself halting because they don't understand. My colleagues don't yet understand these principles, even though they know biology, chemistry, and physics. So the principles of doshas, the understanding of tissues of the body that form one from the other, which is so elegant in Ayurveda, and the concept of channels governing how disease flows and how nutrients flow, is a very, very important part of the science. And I have been learning that for the last few years. So we can't translate it, we can only understand it. But when I talk to you about the birds, I may not have a word for how that bird finds its way, but we all understand that phenomenon because we've all seen it. And that is the best way to understand Ayurveda. That makes it very difficult to prove in modern medical terms, in the clinical trials and the various scientific published studies that people demand. However, the truth of that bird coming together, or of 2 molecules repulsing or coming together, and that movement, or the physics of gravity or electromagnetic forces, those are all known. And when they're integrated with disease and health in the human body, they create a science that is as yet unspoken in English, but exactly spoken in the language of Sanskrit, which all of us from South Asia have some basis in our own language, unless we only speak English. If we speak any other of the languages, Punjabi to Telugu to Bengali to Malayalam, we all know some Sanskrit words. Ayurveda is a strong nature-aligned science, and it uses principles of observation, and it has a keen awareness of physiology. These are some of the languages that are needed to understand Ayurveda. Just as these silos keep the brains separate, what has happened in modern world, which prevents people from understanding Ayurveda, is that most people don't learn all these different sciences. They only learn a few of them. So the person that understands certain science of, let's say, botany, doesn't necessarily understand quantum physics. But the Vaidyas who are excellent at Ayurveda have learned to incorporate understanding of each of these. And this is one of the beauties, but also one of the challenges of Ayurveda explaining itself. There are many modalities, and the question is, are they translatable? In the first top section, I've put the ones that we can put under complementary medicine because most people have heard of these, and you can use them as part of a health intervention. The second part is called CAM, but it is oftentimes seen as being quackery or as being non-scientific, and certainly not as scientific as some of these changes. There are also other modalities that Ayurveda uses, which are very specific to Ayurveda, that use the idea of the mind, the body, the senses, and the soul. Yes, the soul is included in every part of Ayurveda, and the senses are included. And this is not so much there in the modern medical system as yet. Modern medicine is just starting to learn about the mind-body connection and the importance of controlling the senses. The last part is the idea that there are subtle energies that affect us. They are considered to be blatant quackery by the West, and I don't spend much time on it. But yoga understands the importance of mantra and of some of these sciences. The axiomatic scales that take us from 10 to the minus 24, the yoctometer, to the yotometer, which is 10 to the plus 24, is completely understood by Ayurveda. We go all the way from the very most subtle energy forms to the very largest astronomy calculations of the galaxy. Modern medicine is still going right here from the nanoscale up to about the meter scale. So while modern medicine is doing a great job at expanding from the milliliter or the millimeter down to the nanometer, these areas are just not accessible to the modern medical person. So we have a difficulty in trying to validate our science of Ayurveda to the rest of the modern medical world. We do believe in prevention, certainly. Swasthasya swasthya rakshana. We say that keep your healthy body healthy, but we also are not just a preventive science in Ayurveda. Ayurveda talks about comprehensive treatment for disorders that can be treated. The first concept that I want to share with you and fundamental principles is of Ojas. Ojas is that indescribable vitality that is your strength and your ability to stay strong and to resist disease. It is that charisma, it is that power. It has two components, one called something like strength, which is bala, and something that you can say is like fighting against disease, which is called vyadi kshamatva. And it is that principle of resilience that we try to heighten. So when people say immune boosting, it's not just boosting up beyond a point. It's optimizing. So that when you fortify the body, it gets to an optimal level and it doesn't go beyond that because this is the optimum. That idea of the body knowing its optimum is absolutely captured in the Ojas producing foods and substances. We know that the decline of Ojas starts with various activities that we should not be getting into. One is living in fear. One is constant weakness. One is lack of fortification with happiness or with good, clean, fresh food. One is worry, affliction of constant pain, loss of your complexion, hopelessness. Unfortunately, some of these that we have described were some of the things that Honorable Sidhu was mentioning that is happening around coronavirus. People are losing their Ojas simply from the frustration of having to deal with this chronic difficulty that they just don't know how to deal with because it's been unprecedented to live indoors, separate. I haven't hugged a human being in 10 months or 9 months or so. You know, what does that do to a person? But Ayurveda says that watch your Ojas, and if you don't take care of it, you're going to lose it. I'm going to talk about this slide at the end if we can, and move on to some of the regulations in these last 5-10 minutes. If you Google search, I know there are many search engines out there, but if, let's say, you choose to use this pseudo-monopoly Google engine and say, okay, Ayurveda Canada, and you put no other words in there, look at how many results you get. There are So this is obviously in Indian digits. So if you say, we'll just translate, it's 13,400,000 results. In it, there are all kinds of related searches of different groups. This is one of the wonderful things about Canada. It's one of the challenges of Canada. So I don't want to talk about any one association because there are so many. They are spread throughout the provinces. They are certainly doing the work at their level. Some involve patients that are interested in Ayurveda. Some involve particular specialties, particular groups. There are people in all over Pan-Canada, or there are people in one province, and they are working together as per their interests and as per their common colleagues. If you are looking to find someone, you can do a Google search. You don't have to go through 13 million. You should put in your province here. You should put in Ayurveda and let's say Nova Scotia, or if you're in Ottawa, or if you're in Saskatchewan, you can put in your specific title, and every place in Canada you will find at least a few Ayurvedic suppliers of licensed herbs, NPNs, practitioners, associations, or clinics that offer Ayurveda. Among so many people, there is so much Ayurveda. So I'm not sure what happened here to the slide. So there is a licensed natural health products database, which was mentioned before by Honorable Sidhu. In it, you can find many products. So I'm actually going to just pull out, let's see, I'm not sure why this happened here. So there are many drugs that are available. And these are all licensed. They have a number that you can look for. And what it shows is that there are quite a few different products. This is just a random list. Let me see if I can just show you some of these here. So these are monographs that are actually in the system, and they include many of the herbs. I'm going to show you hopefully let's just go on to the next slide. These are from Sumedha Joglekar, who works with Health Canada. She is a BAMS graduate, also has studied Sanskrit, and she has given me permission to use these slides. She has compared the regulations in Canada with the regulations in India, and she has looked at how a person can get their products registered. Here's that monograph again here's that slide again with the monographs of different Ayurvedic ingredients and what is possible already if you want to bring products in. This is already in the database. What does it look like? You go to the Natural Health Products Ingredients database, and you can actually go in and click, and I'm going to show you some slides from that. The way in which those products are licensed comes from these various references. And anyone that wants to bring products in should know about this. So if you click, and I just put in ashwagandha, you can actually see that there's a whole bunch of products. I think there's 6. Let's see, how do we see that? Here we go. 6 ingredients. So 6 products have the ingredient ashwagandha within it. And if you click on any one of these, you will see the actual brand name, the natural product number, and how and why it was approved. So the idea of natural health products being allowed is actually more forward thinking than the US FDA, who has gone through a lot of, let's say, they're still turning wheels on how to do it. This we know from actually one of the leaders of this, who was Dr. Bishwajit Mukherjee, who came in 2007 to Health Canada and worked with getting some of these products registered. There are dozens of products registered. This one is for Shatavari, this one is for Guduchi, this is for Andrographis, which is Kalmeg, and there are many products that have natural product licenses and are legally available. So if anyone says to you, Ayurvedic products aren't licensed in Canada, they're wrong. And you should go to the Health Canada database. It is very robust, and just learn how to navigate your way through it and learn which products are available to you. Second is the regulations on the professions. So the Health Professions Regulatory Advisory Council has, well, it's actually 2 criteria, but it's 1 and then 2 A, B, C, D, E. So the first criterion is there any degree of harm posed by the profession to the public? And this is a question that has been asked of Ayurvedic leaders. Then there are secondary criteria. The primary criterion is most important. That's hello. I'm back. Can you see me?
We can't see you yet, but yeah, now that's good.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not really sure what happened. Okay, so the Ontario Health Professions Regulatory Council has these primary criteria. The secondary criteria are the ones that we need to focus on if we, as an Ayurvedic group of doctors, want to have regulation and all of this talk about licensing. The autonomy needs to be there, a standard curriculum needs to be there, a common language needs to be there, a body of knowledge and a scope of practice need to be there. These are things which I will say boldly need to be, what shall we say, need to be coalesced among the community. Right now, we do not have any guidelines that are coherent and set up by groups like the Government of India, Department of Ayush, or the WHO. Though they do have criteria, they don't really fit what is needed, and that is the safe and effective care of patients using a body of knowledge and a scope of practice in which the public are safe and effectively treated. This is where the group of Ayurvedic doctors in this country need to come forth. And let me just share my slides again. I think I turned them off and on. Can you see my slides now, Dr. Harish?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So this is where we need to have the group of doctors come together and say, we have these mechanisms in place. They're very robust mechanisms from the government, but we need to understand where the educational requirements are. If I want to practice safely and effectively for my patients in Canada, let's say because it's regulated by province, let's say only in Ontario, for example, then what is the curriculum that we need to put together so that everyone that comes from any of the Bharatiya countries or anywhere that's licensed comes to Canada, how do we get them to adhere to these particular understandings of the Ahara, Vihara, Oshadam that's available in Canada? In English language, Ahara is the how, what, why, where of how we eat and what food we choose. Vihara is the lifestyle, which most Indians do not understand until they've lived in Canada for some time. And the Oshadam is which products are legally available, and understanding of dravyas, that not everything is ingestible. Some of it's cosmetic, some of it's available in our spices, some of it's available for topical use. So if you can use the wide repertoire of substances that are available, you could actually come up with a curriculum that would allow Ayurvedic doctors to organize and then to fill these criteria which are needed. And once these are fulfilled, you could apply to the Ontario health professions to come together. This is a fear of the unknown. I'm going to end with this slide, even though, well, maybe I'll do one or two other slides. This is a talk about heavy metals. And this is very dear to my heart because what I honestly feel is that we do not understand heavy metals very well. We do not understand that metals need to be cleaned. They need to be processed in a way that nanotechnology is now learning to do, and that ancient Ayurvedic sciences known as Rasa Shastra have been doing for millennia. Until that knowledge is properly brought into the parlance of the scientists and the doctors in a language they can understand, all we can do is keep them in India. People are welcome to come from India, get treatments. If they can write clinical studies. Canada is one of the countries that will say that if there are clinical studies that shows it's effective, they will listen and they will not certainly blindly accept it, but entertain the fact that it's possible. But those kind of studies that are very easy to do aren't being done. And that is one of the reasons why heavy metals are not being used in most of the Western world today. I'm looking for my slide on heavy metals, but as I end, I will welcome you to read some of these columns that I've written in the southasiantimes.info, that's the website. And I talk about various themes related to coronavirus, Ayurveda, the use of fumigation, the use of stoking the fire to clean the phlegm in the lungs, and I think I have a few others that are in here. I will take my slide.
I think we lost Dr. Bhattacharya again.
Dr. Verma, would you like to take on from here and actually continue what she was talking?
Yeah, I'm going to call her. 30 seconds will be back, and I think this is maybe some internet problem may be there.
I think, yeah.
So,
Dr. Harish?
yes,
Dr.
yes,
Harish?
yes.
My connection is completely gone. I have no idea what's happening.
So you are audible.
Yes.
You are audible on phone if you want to come.
Hello?
Yes, you are audible now. You are audible now.
Am I audible now?
Yes. Sriji, can you listen?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, she can continue on the
So
audio.
you can continue. I have taken you on phone. You're on speaker. Hello?
Dr. Verma, I would request, yeah, she's back.
I'm so sorry. I have no idea why that happened.
That's all right.
It's sign of the times to come. We have some very dangerous things about to happen on this planet. So I was talking about the clock genes and the reconnection with your clock genes by doing Dinacharya. So I just want to end with this slide, since I am not able to find the slide about heavy metals very quickly, and see if there are any questions that people would like to ask me. Oh, wait, I did find the slide. I'll just finish with this one. Ayurveda knows that there is something in the body called the metallome. These are the human body's metals. And so we have all these minerals and metals that are part of our body's needs. Certainly we know about iron in hemoglobin and copper in our liver and in some of our blood proteins. We also know about zinc on the DNA. Ayurveda already knew that you need to take metals and adjust them to come into the human body, and that there are enzymes such as this enzyme, which is very relevant to COVID, so I put it here, the extracellular superoxide dismutase. If you run out of copper and zinc, which is what's going to happen when coronavirus eats it up, you need to replenish it. Otherwise, you're going to get sick. Ayurveda understood this, and in fact, those of us who study Rasa Shastra have been putting this together from various well-published articles in very good journals. And what we've done is come up with a series of rasa oshadhis that are only available in India legally, India and the Bharatiya countries. And so we give our patients these medicines. For whatever reason, none of the groups in the world who are in charge of the corona situation have listened to this. And so what we're left with is a group of people who are using these kind of medicines and quietly and respectfully paying attention to the groups of people that say heavy metals are dangerous. And I want to end with this because one of the reasons that I am here in India is that I've been studying these kind of medicines and looking at the fact that the nanoparticles in bhasmas and the ability to titrate them and purify them in a way that they can be used on the human body is so important that if we don't listen, we are going to be in a place where we don't allow much of Ayurveda, which is okay because it's still available in India. But I mourn for the Canadian and the American and the European people who haven't yet gotten to the place where they can be actually open-minded enough to see the science of other sciences. I know that's a bold statement to make, but as a person who's a pharmacologist, neuroscientist, public health physician, allopathic doctor, has studied homeopathy and also studied Ayurveda, I think I have the right to make that. And in fact, I was invited to the FDA to speak about this topic because they are actually starting to understand that there are many elements of Ayurveda that are so important and that are very prescient of how the human body works. So I have a whole series of slides that talk about the gut and how it works. And I'm just going to show you one. That is that understanding Ahara requires so many different principles that talk about building up the body by eating in certain ways. If you can eat good foods, you don't need any other medicines because the foods give you the nutrition and the fortification you need. If your gut is slightly unwell, those are the people that are actually succumbing to coronavirus. And though we haven't been able to do a large-scale clinical study because no one will fund it, what we are finding as doctors anecdotally is that most of the people that are getting sick from coronavirus are people that have had some level of dis-ease or unwellness in their gut. I'm going to leave it with that because I have a lot of other things that I could say. And I will, oh, I think my last slide disappeared. So, yeah, I guess I'll just have to end with that because I had a last slide with my email address on it. So thank you very, very much. And I'm open for questions. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you so very much, Dr. Bhaswati, such a passionate presentation. And for the view of our audience, just want to share that all these presentations will be available on our social media, and you can, whatever slides Dr. Bhaswati could not explain further, I think, but those slides will be available. And now I would like to invite Dr. Harish Verma to give some remarks on the presentation and see if we can have quick few questions. Dr. Verma.
Yes, first of all, I am thankful to Dr. Bhaswati for accepting my invitation. And I would like to ask Dr. Bhaswati, can you share your one or two experiences when you felt in your practice that there is nothing to offer to your patients in allopathic system, and you found the solution of that particular problem in Ayurveda? What was that? Can you share some practical points?
Yeah, so for example, yesterday I saw a patient. I'm doing most of my patients on visits on video consultation. He has had a 10-year experience of hemorrhoids, piles or hemorrhoids. And he has been treated by many, many, many allopathic doctors. And certainly I had seen in my clinical, I had done my internship residency at Columbia Presbyterian in New York. We had a lot of patients with hemorrhoids and they would generally go for surgeries. And surgery after surgery, they would be treated and they weren't treated well. They would continuously come back. They were never cured. When I went to BHU, Banaras Hindu University, we found that there was an entire group of people doing Kshara Sutra, which is one of the treatments used in the surgical branch of Ayurveda. But I myself didn't train in Kshara Sutra. So what I learned to do is use Haritaki with Madhu. So Haritaki is an herb, Terminalia tabula, It's very easily available. It's available as a dry herb in America and in Canada. Honey, raw organic honey, mixing them together and just putting them as a cover on top of that area that is in pain and allowing that to come together. There's an effect called rechana, with which the body's channels, which are all filled with capillaries that are broken down from stool getting into the area, which is what piles is, those capillaries start to collapse together and move everything to the center. And then suddenly it just expresses itself in one channel. And then we use something that's a ghee called Jatiyabi Ghurtam. I find that that has worked amazing to help people with very low forming hemorrhoids, meaning external hemorrhoids, and it's curative. Another that I found, Harish Verma, I'm saying in front of you, I work with about 40% irritable bowel syndrome patients. And I find that Ayurveda is so superior at working with irritable bowel. I'm going to share a slide again with you.
I think we lost Dr. Verma. Please continue.
We lost the connection. Okay.
Yeah, we lost the connection. So let's do the concluding. Some your thoughts.
It was a very good, very informative talk, and we will involve Dr. Bhaswati ji for helping us in making some presentation to the Ministry for Regulation of Ayurveda. And CG, you can also highlight how the things are going on in that direction and where we have reached so far, because some of the members of our Canadian Ayurvedic Practitioners Association, they are willing to know what is happening now, where we have reached in direction of regulation of Ayurveda. Kindly update us.
Thank you, Dr. Verma, and for all our audience, first of all, a very, very sincere thank you for joining us, and to our very distinguished speaker, Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya. I think she's a living example of integrated medicine, which is the future, and she exemplifies that by practicing it on a daily basis, and that is our key objective of Canada India Foundation, along with the Canadian Ayurvedic Practitioner Association, as well as Vedic Spiritual Heritage Foundation, that we should create an environment of yoga and Ayurveda in Canada, how that is helpful in the preventative healthcare side. And we are working very closely with the Ministry of Ontario on the health side to see how we can work on that front to get Ayurveda regulated in Canada, as well as that how we can start some of the educational programs also, which is the key, that we have to create a community which is yoga and Ayurveda followers. So we'll keep everybody posted on that, and I hope everybody enjoyed today's presentation. Please do write to us for your feedback and stay tuned for our next session. A very special thanks to our Honorable MP Maninder Sidhu also for joining today. And he shared, I think, very excellent remark that what Government of Canada's view on Ayurveda is, and will keep federal and the provincial level involved, that how we can work together in spreading this awareness. And I also want to thank some of media partner. As you all know, that our sessions are live broadcasted, not only Facebook, but also the TV channel of Y Media as well as Pravasi Media. So a special thanks to them for broadcasting our live coverages, and stay tuned. Today also marks the